The parents seemed pretty normal. They smiled a lot, didn't say much, and moved quickly around the house, like they were in a hurry but trying not to show it. They left a list of instructions taped to the fridge, gave their 2 kids a quick hug, and left without much of a goodbye. Nathan and Zoe were calm, quiet, well-behaved, 7 and 9 years old, playing a memory game on the carpet like they'd done it 1,000 times. I settled onto the couch with my laptop across my leg, while they kept playing. They didn't yell, didn't fight, didn't even talk much. Honestly, it was refreshing. I thought the night would be boring, but easy. The house was silent, almost unnaturally so, but I figured it was just the neighborhood. When it was time for bed, I told them to head upstairs. No complaints. They went up on their own. I followed out of habit, asking if they wanted a story. Nathan said no without looking at me. Zoe was already in bed, staring at the ceiling. I shrugged it off, closed the door, and headed back down. I opened the fridge, grabbed some cookies, and sat down again with my phone. I remember thinking how smooth everything was going. No drama, no noise. It almost felt like I wasn't even babysitting, just passing time. The first knock on the door was soft, but it hit me like a jolt. 3 dry taps. I walked over, phone still in hand, assuming the parents had forgotten something. Through the frosted glass, I could make out a figure standing completely still. No movement, no sound, just standing there. I put my hand on the lock, but didn't turn it yet. Then the screaming started upstairs. Both kids shrieking like something was tearing them apart. Nathan's voice cracked as he shouted not to open the door. He kept saying, "It's him! He's the bad man! He comes at night to take us!" Zoe was yelling too, telling me to step away from the door. My body froze. I couldn't decide whether to look at the handle or run upstairs. The man knocked again, louder this time. Then he grabbed the knob and started shaking it violently, like he knew I had been about to open it. I ran to the landline. Dead. No dial tone, not even static. I searched the living room, my bag, the floor. My phone was gone. Every second without a signal felt like another nail in the coffin. I went to the kitchen, desperate for another phone, and that's when I saw him, standing outside the window, less than 2 feet away, staring right at me. His face wasn't human. His face looked burnt, melted. The skin was cracked open in places, raw and blackened. His lips were twisted like he had to learn how to talk again after losing half his mouth. He moved his jaw like he was saying something, but no words made sense. Just dry, broken sounds like metal scraping against itself. He never blinked, even when he slammed both hands flat against the glass. He was trying to talk, maybe even plead. I backed away slowly, barely breathing. Then his hands hit the window harder. He wasn't trying to scare me. He looked desperate, like he needed me to understand something, but I couldn't. I didn't want to. I bolted upstairs without another glance. I ran to the kids' room and shut the door behind me. I asked them if they knew him. Nathan said, "He only comes when babysitters are here." Zoe added, "He heard this last one. That's why my mom and dad don't let us talk about him." I told them to stay put while I checked the locks downstairs. I didn't want to leave anything open, not after seeing that thing outside. In the hallway, I heard a soft noise, different from the knocks. It sounded like a door sliding across tile. I froze. My back went cold. Something was wrong. I ran to the kitchen and felt my stomach drop. The back door was wide open. Outside, everything was dark, but inside, we weren't alone anymore. I heard footsteps behind me, slow, dragging. I turned and ran toward the stairs, but halfway there, I saw him. He was already inside, bleeding hands moving toward the stairs, eyes locked on me. I threw myself to the side to dodge, but he caught my arm. His grip was brutal. It felt like bones were grinding under his fingers. I screamed. I tried to break free, hit him with a vase. Nothing. He didn't even flinch. I grabbed a floor lamp and smashed it into him. That gave me just enough of a gap to push him away and run upstairs. He didn't follow right away. I heard a deep, wet growl behind me, like his lungs were full of tar. I barricaded the bedroom door with a chair. The kids were sitting quietly on the floor. Zoe had crossed her legs. Nathan was drawing something. I told them to stay quiet, not to move. They didn't respond. Nathan whispered, "He's already inside." Then came the banging on the door. Not knocks, full body slams. The chair slid across the floor with each hit. The kids crawled closer to me. I backed into the wall. That's when the pain hit, sharp and deep. Something stabbed my foot. I looked down, a screwdriver sticking out of me. Nathan was smiling, not scared, happy. Zoe jumped onto me and bit into my shoulder like an animal. I screamed, shoved her off, blood pouring down my arm. The door shattered. He rushed in, but not towards me, toward them. He grabbed them both, not to hurt them, but to hold them down. They tore into him like wild dogs, scratching, biting, screaming in voices that didn't belong to children, voices that didn't sound human. I crawled out of the room, dragging my bleeding foot. He screamed behind me. It didn't sound like pain. It sounded like something being devoured, piece by piece. I slid down the stairs, leaving a streak of blood on every step. I made it to the kitchen and threw myself against the back door. Somehow, it wasn't locked. I rolled into the grass outside, soaked in sweat and blood. The cold air slapped me awake. I tried to stand, but someone grabbed me by the waist. A woman. She pulled me up like I weighed nothing, dragging me to her car, and shoved me into the passenger seat. My hands shook. I couldn't form words. She slammed the door shut, looked at me once, then ran toward the house. I thought she was going to die in there, but after what felt like forever, she came back, panting, eyes wide. She got in, turned the key, and drove like hell. I cried, not from pain, from everything I didn't understand, from what I saw in those kids. I didn't want answers. I just wanted to survive. In the car, she kept glancing at me. Her mouth trembled. Then she spoke. She said that the man was her brother. He used to be the babysitter. The kids burnt his face on the stove. He barely made it out alive. No one believed him, not even her. She said she started watching the house after that. The parents never showed up. No one ever left or came in except new babysitters. She thought maybe he'd gone insane. Until tonight. He didn't come to hurt anyone. He came to stop it from happening again. She broke down crying, hitting the steering wheel. She said she didn't know what those kids were, but they weren't kids. Her brother said something lived inside them. Something that woke up when adults left them alone at night. I just nodded, frozen. Blood sticky on my arms. My foot on fire. My brain barely holding on. We never spoke about it again. She helped me heal. Helped me lie at the hospital. Let me stay at her place the first few nights. We never went back again. Sometimes I dream about them. About their fake smiles. Their teeth in my skin. Their eyes without emotion. Sometimes I hear him scream again, being ripped apart. I never babysat again. I changed cities, changed numbers, changed everything. But the memory's still there, as real as the night it happened. The woman and I talk once a month. We never bring it up, but we both know it's still out there. That house, that family, waiting for the next babysitter.
It was a normal Tuesday afternoon when my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my close friend Mia, who worked in software and was a computer genius. The text read, "Watch this ASAP. and below that was a link to a video. I clicked on it, thinking it must be another cat or dog video that we mostly shared, but what I saw on my screen froze me in my steps. 3 months earlier, after being served the eviction notice for a third time, I finally started looking for an apartment. Someone who works a minimum wage job and mostly lives from paycheck to paycheck, finding an affordable, safe home is a challenge. So when I saw this studio apartment listing on the internet, I was thrilled. I visited the apartment complex, and after a single look at the apartment, I was ready to sign the deed. Desperation had clouded my judgment, and without asking why the rent was so low, I moved into my new place a week later. Despite being in the heart of downtown, most of the apartments in the building were vacant, and the ones that were rented were mostly occupied by people like me who couldn't afford much rent. I never much interacted with my neighbors, but the old lady who lived across the hall was always polite. She had been living in the exact same apartment for 20 years. However, whenever I asked her anything about the apartment complex, she always got a weird look on her face, and then she would whisper under her breath that the building was haunted. I never believed in things like ghosts and spirits. I was a woman of reason and logic. But the more time I spent there, things just kept getting weirder and weirder. My bathroom was always unreasonably cold. Things in my home kept moving, and the worst were the footsteps that I heard in the hallways at night, which would always stop at the end of it. Not at the old lift or the stairs of any apartment. Nope. Always at the end of the hallways. But the cheap rent kept me in place, and the landlord was very flexible with the rent as well. One evening when I got back from work, the door to my apartment was unlocked, and I heard rustling and footsteps inside. I had no weapon on me, so I did what most people would in that situation. I called the cops. 2 officers were at the gate of my apartment complex in minutes, and I explained my situation to them. They asked me to wait by their car while they went up and checked out my apartment. After about 20 minutes of me pacing back and forth, the officers emerged and told me that everything in my apartment looked fine. There was no sign of anyone breaking in or stealing anything. They walked me back to my apartment, and once I was inside, I noticed that nothing was misplaced. Everything was just as I'd left it in the morning. But still, there was an unsettling feeling deep in me that told me to run, leave that place as soon as possible. But I ignored it. I only wish now that I had listened. After that day, the unwanted movement in my apartment stopped. Things were in place. I never heard anyone walking in the hallway. Nothing. It was as if the hypothetical ghost was scared away by the cops. But oh boy, was I wrong. Days passed, and this incident had slipped from my mind until a Tuesday, when Mia sent me the video link. On a sketchy website on the dark web was a video of me stripping naked in my bedroom after my shift was over. It felt like someone was recording the whole thing from my closet. I couldn't bear watching it anymore, and I rushed to the restroom to empty my stomach. My fellow employees gave me looks of confusion and empathy. However, from within, I was so shaken that I had no idea how I was supposed to deal with any of this. That's when my phone rang, and it was Mia calling me. I barely managed to pick up the phone when she said something that shook me to my core. "Brenda, there's much more videos like this on that site." Bile rose to my throat again, and tears threatened to spill over my cheeks. But who had done this to me? How did this happen, Mia? All these videos were recorded in my own home, and I live all alone in my apartment. I rarely have visitors. How do I deal with this? What if someone I know finds these videos? I was on the verge of tears when Mia's soft voice replied, "Brenda, honey, calm down. My team and I are currently working on finding out who did this, and we will help you erase all these videos from the internet. But you need to do something for me." Mia told me to buy a few things and do something when I got back to my apartment. When I was home, I was scared to even step inside. It felt like the place had betrayed me, but I had things to do. I switched off the lights to the whole place, switching on the hidden camera detector device that I had purchased. I began scanning. The sheer number of cameras I discovered was astonishing. There was a hidden camera in my washroom, my bedroom, and even my living room. I found a total of 7 hidden cameras. The next thing Mia had asked me to do was call the cops. But this time I asked for a detective instead of just the police. Detective Garfield, an older-looking gentleman, was at my doorstep that evening, and I briefed him on the situation. Within minutes, the whole apartment complex was swamped with cops, and an extensive search of my apartment was conducted. The things that had happened to me were pretty serious. While looking through my bathroom, the cops found a hidden door behind my full-length mirror, and what they found next was straight out of a true crime documentary. There were hidden passageways that ran parallel to the hallways, and there was a secret entrance into each apartment of the building. And all of this led to a hidden room which was a maintenance room years ago, where there was a high-tech setup of screens that showed live video feed of multiple apartments in our complex. Not just mine, but others that were vacant as well. The perpetrators weren't there, but there was proof enough for the cops to launch an investigation. Turns out the perps were selling these videos on the dark web to the highest bidders. Videos of me sleeping, undressing, showering, and doing all sorts of things were being sold on the internet. Turns out my friend Mia was not working in a software company. She was actually working for a non-profit, catching such predators off the dark web. Till that moment, I had no idea what the dark web even was. But after some help from Mia and doing some digging on the internet, I realized how horrifying and gruesome this side of the internet was, not to mention how widespread it is. Immediately that night, I moved out of the apartment, and after couch hopping for a week or two, I found a new one in a new building. The rent was high, but so were the safety measures. Detective Garfield stayed in touch and kept me posted about the case. He never told me more than I needed to know, but the day he delivered the news that all of my videos were off the dark web forever was the day I finally slept peacefully at night. The perpetrators were never officially caught, but I believe the cops took care of them. This was my dark web horror story. Let me know. What was yours?
Ever since I was a little girl, I'd always been told that I had the prettiest green eyes. My mother used to say my eyes were my best feature, and I genuinely believed they were my greatest gift. However, I later realized how wrong I was. As while I didn't know it at the time, the same pretty green eyes I was blessed with would almost cost me my life, and the morbid tale you're about to hear will explain why. I'd just finished college at the time, and had started working towards a career in modeling. Things weren't going great at first, as it was a lot harder to get proper paid gigs than I'd originally thought. It only started to get easier as time went on, and after a while, I began gaining some traction. That was when I was approached by a supermodel agency, and it was there I met my manager, Joshua Howard. Joshua promised to take my modeling career to new heights if I joined his agency, and knowing what a good manager could do for my career, I agreed. Not long after that, I started getting a lot of offers for modeling jobs, and one of those came from a man named Theodore Ridge. Theodore owned a magazine in Milan, Italy, and he told my manager, Josh, that he'd seen my photos and loved my green eyes. He said he wanted to fly me out to Milan to shoot some pictures for his magazine's upcoming spring issue, claiming my eyes made me perfect for the theme. I'd always wanted to visit Italy, so I immediately accepted the job. As Joshua finalized the details, I went home to say goodbye to my mother and my 2-year-old son, Christopher. Leaving them was always the hardest part. I'd had Christopher when I was 18, and even though juggling motherhood with my modeling career wasn't easy, I loved being a young mother. After saying goodbye, I told my mom to take care of my son and promised I'd be back soon. Then I headed straight to the airport and got on my flight to Italy. When I landed in Milan, I didn't have time for sightseeing. Joshua had sent me the studio's location, so I made my way there directly. However, as I stood in front of the studio's door, something felt wrong. I couldn't explain it at first, but I knew it wasn't just nerves. It took me a few minutes to figure it out, but what threw me off was the silence. Modeling studios were always loud with people moving equipment, adjusting lights and shouting instructions, but at this studio, there was nothing but complete silence. I tried to push the feeling aside, telling myself Theodore probably just liked working quietly. I even told myself I was just overthinking things, but as soon as I opened the door, a man in a ski mask grabbed me from behind. It all happened so fast I didn't have time to react. He forced me inside where another man, also in a ski mask, stood waiting, holding an injection. I let out a scream, but the first man clamped a hand over my mouth. I struggled with everything I had, but I felt the needle push into my arm and everything suddenly went dark. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but when I woke up, I couldn't see anything. My body felt heavy, my mouth was gagged, and I couldn't move properly. I thought I'd gone blind until I realized I was trapped in a small compartment, something that seemed to be a large body bag. I felt a zipper above my head and used my fingers to loosen it slightly so I could breathe. I could hear the hum of an engine and feel vibrations all around me. I wasn't just trapped. I was being moved in the trunk of a car. I stayed tied up in that moving vehicle for what felt like hours before the trunk opened and the bag was unzipped. My eyes burned from being in the dark too long, but I eventually managed to take in my surroundings. That's when I first saw the faces of my kidnappers. Two men, both looking like they were in their mid-30s. One had short dark hair and a stubble beard. The other had longer brown hair and thick eyebrows. They looked somewhat similar and both had the same cold, menacing look in their eyes. I begged for my life as they dragged me across a field towards a farmhouse. Once inside, they chained me up in a room and left me there for hours. I was terrified, but I knew I had to stay calm if I wanted to survive. When they came back, I asked why they had taken me. One of the men smiled and said, "Our buyers don't like it when the merchandise is loud, so I'd advise you to keep your mouth shut if you want to stay breathing." That word, merchandise, sent shivers down my spine as the man told me why they'd taken me, saying, "We're Black Death, a criminal organization that operates on the deep web. We've been watching you for months. Numerous clients fell in love with your green eyes, and they all want you." He then showed me a picture of myself unconscious in a velvet bodysuit, with the words, Black Death, printed on a logo placed on my stomach. He showed me photos of other women too, all chained up like me. He then told me what would happen to me, saying, "In a few days, you'll be auctioned off as a sex slave on the dark web. If you're lucky, when your owner's done with you, he might trade you in for another slave, but if you're not, well, I've heard some of our clients enjoy feeding their merchandise to tigers. They like watching the beast rip apart the bodies of their used goods." I was speechless, and nothing could describe the horror I felt. Then he offered me a chance at freedom, telling me that my family or manager could outbid the current offers from the buyers. The highest bid on the dark web was 250,000 euros, and they'd let me go if someone paid 300,000 euros in ransom within 7 days. No one I knew could get that money, but I still gave them my mother's number, Joshua's number, and a few friends. I also desperately hoped that someone would at least realize I'd been kidnapped and call the police. But no one came. Each day that passed felt like I was waiting to die. My captors taunted me constantly. One of them, Boris, told me a client had offered 270,000 euros. Not to buy me, but to buy my eyes, as he wanted them ripped out and kept in a jar. I cried every night, thinking of my mother and my son. I wanted to die rather than face what was coming. But then, hope came from someone I least expected. A guy named Jacob. He was one of the men who kidnapped me, but he was different. He brought me food, he talked to me, and he told me he didn't choose this life, as the dark web organization Black Death had recruited him as a teenager. He even realized how they made over $15 million selling women on the dark web. I didn't trust him at first, but he told me something that gave me hope. As he said, buyers preferred women without children, and they didn't know I had a son. I begged him to tell them I was a mother. He promised he would, saying it was the only way they might call off the auction. So I waited, praying. Then, on the day I was supposed to be sold, the auction was canceled, and I was released. But my freedom came with terms. Jacob told me Black Death had prepared a letter I'd receive after my release. It listed instructions to avoid the police, spread their message in the media, and pay them $50,000 in Bitcoin as a release fee. If I failed, they'd find me and kill me. I agreed, as I just wanted to go home. They then blindfolded me and drove me to the British consulate in Milan. Jacob said he'd walk me in and pretend to be a friend I'd called for help. But the second I stepped inside, the authorities recognized me and arrested Jacob. I felt guilty as I thought I owed him my life. But when the investigation unfolded, I found out the harrowing truth. As Jacob wasn't my savior as I'd believed, but the very mastermind of my kidnapping. Detectives discovered emails between Jacob and his brother Boris, showing that Jacob himself had masterminded my kidnapping. He wasn't a reluctant accomplice. He was the leader. Investigators also found hundreds of photos of me on his laptop, along with the staged Black Death ransom letter. In court, Jacob admitted he'd injected me with ketamine, stuffed me into a bag, and taken me to that farmhouse. He said he'd fallen in love with me and thought that if he made me believe he saved me from my kidnapping, we'd start a relationship. Both Jacob and his brother were sentenced to 16 years in prison. This whole ordeal changed my life forever, and I've spent years in therapy trying to recover. I still think about it every day, and I sometimes wonder about the countless other women who aren't as lucky as I was. The authorities confirmed the real Black Death group is still out there somewhere, selling women like merchandise on the dark web to this very day. The story you just heard is based on the true case of Chloe Eiling, a 20-year-old British model kidnapped in Milan in July 2017. Lured by a fake modeling job, she was abducted by Lucas Herba, who claimed to have ties to the dark web trafficking group known as Black Death. Herba demanded a €300,000 ransom, threatening to auction her online. But after 6 days, Chloe was freed and walked into the British consulate, where Herba was arrested. After his arrest, Lucas initially claimed he and Chloe staged the kidnapping together, but investigators found no proof. Authorities later uncovered disturbing evidence, including photos of Chloe drugged and prepped for auction on the dark web, alongside a chilling ransom letter from the Black Death organization. Lucas Herba was then sentenced to over 16 years in prison, later reduced to 12. His brother Conrad Herba, who also participated in the kidnapping, received a similar sentence. The real Black Death group's involvement remains unclear, and their operations on the dark web continue to evade authorities.
I never cared much about online security. I used the same password everywhere, clicked on suspicious links, and shared way too much personal information on my social media. It never felt like a problem until the first email arrived. The subject line was my full name, in all caps. Inside there was a single sentence, "We know everything," attached with screenshots, private conversations, bank statements, medical records, even old emails I had deleted years ago. At first, I thought it was some kind of scam. I ignored it. But then, my phone rang, a blocked number, a voice distorted by software. Send 5,000 in Bitcoin within 24 hours, or your mother finds out where you've been hiding. I didn't pay. Why would I? I assumed they were bluffing. But the next day, my mother called me in tears. Someone had sent her an email with detailed accusations. Things that weren't even true, but so carefully crafted they sounded real. She begged me to explain. I couldn't. I had no idea what was happening. I told her it was a mistake, but the damage was done. My relationship with her changed that day. She couldn't say it, but I could tell she didn't trust me anymore. Then, another email arrived. A video. It was footage of me sitting in my apartment staring at my phone. The timestamp was from last night. Someone had been watching me. My chest tightened. My fingers felt numb as I gripped my phone. I looked around the room, suddenly aware of every shadow, every open door. I tried to tell myself it was fake, some elaborate trick, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. This was just the beginning. I locked all my doors and windows. I covered my webcam. I changed my passwords. None of it mattered. The next message proved that. Nice try. Check your front door. My heart pounded as I walked to the door. There was a package inside. A USB drive. I plugged it into an old laptop, afraid of what it might do to my main one. A video played. It was me again, this time sleeping. The camera angle suggested it was filmed from the inside of my room. My stomach twisted. I looked around, my skin crawling from the feeling of being watched. How long had they been inside? Were they still here? I ripped my bedroom apart, searching for a hidden camera. Nothing. Another message arrived. You're wasting your time. We're inside already. I felt like I was going to be sick. I backed against the wall, gripping my phone so tightly my fingers ached. I considered calling the police. But what would I tell them? That someone had sent me a creepy email? That I felt like I was being watched? They wouldn't believe me. Another message came through. 10,000 by midnight, or we'll show her everything, I said in silence, staring at my screen. Then another message. Or you can pay in a different way. They gave me a choice. Pay them, or follow their instructions. Grab a knife. I didn't move. My hands were shaking. We're watching. If you don't do it, your mother pays the price. I walked to the kitchen like a puppet, my body moving without my permission. I picked up a knife, staring at my reflection in the steel. My breathing was shallow, my pulse hammering in my ears. I wanted to run, to throw my phone away and disappear, but I knew that wouldn't save me. Good. Now cut yourself. Not too deep. Just enough to show us you're serious. I pressed the tip of the blade against my palm. I hesitated. My skin prickled with cold sweat. I told myself not to do it, that it was all a game, that they couldn't actually reach me. But then I thought about my mother, about what they could do to her. Do it, or she suffers. I pressed harder. A thin line of red appeared. The pain barely registered. That's a good start. Now let's move on to something more interesting. Every night they sent me new instructions. Small things at first. Breaking a window. Stealing from a store. It escalated fast. They made me follow strangers. Take photos of their homes. Their children. I was becoming a part of something terrible. And I couldn't stop. Then came the worst order. Choke her while she sleeps. Make it quick. If you don't, we are all going to torture her for days. She is going to beg to be dead. I stared at the screen for a long time. My mother, the woman who raised me, who loved me, who doubted me because of them. They wanted me to kill her. I didn't respond. I packed the bag and drove to her house. My hands felt numb on the wheel. My heart pounded in my ears. I didn't remember unlocking the door, but suddenly, I was inside, standing over her bed. She was breathing softly, peacefully, unaware. I moved towards the bathroom, filled the sink with cold water. My reflection looked like a ghost. I grabbed the bedsheet, soaked it, wrung it out. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. I walked back to her, raised the wet towel over her face, lowered it. Her breathing hitched, her body tensed. She struggled, but I pressed harder. I wasn't myself. I was something else. And then I let go. She gasped, sucking in air. I stumbled back, horrified by what I had done, what I had almost done. My phone buzzed. You disappointed us. I ran. I didn't take anything with me, just drove as far as I could. The messages didn't stop. Why are you running? We are going to find you after we end your mother. I changed numbers. They got the new one. I stopped using the internet. They still reached me. They didn't need my devices. They had my life. Then, one day, silence. No emails, no calls, no threats. I didn't trust it. Every noise outside made my skin crawl. I expected them to appear at any moment, to drag me into something even worse. But nothing happened. Just the waiting. Maybe they moved on. Maybe I wasn't fun anymore. Maybe they had already ruined me enough. I don't use my real name anymore. I live in a small town where no one knows me. I don't have a phone. I don't have a computer. I don't talk to my mother. I don't talk to anyone. I am afraid. I'm afraid that they killed my mother. I don't even want to know. As far as she knows. If she's alive. The last time she saw me, I was trying to kill her. What else is left for me?